In 2022, it takes approximately 19 weeks from sale agreed to exchange of contracts. When I were a lad as an estate agent, it took between 8 and 10 weeks, which is only 25 years ago. So why is it taking nearly twice as long to get a property sale through from sale agreed to exchange of contracts, especially when we have all of this wonderful technology to our hands? Today, I'm joined by some of the biggest names in estate agency and conveyancing to discuss this absolutely fascinating topic so we can sort out what we're going to do as an industry and industries to move this one forward. Today, I'm joined by Peter Ambrose, who is the MD of the partnership, and he's a conveyancer. So we're going to get his point of view from the conveyancing process. We're also joined by Beth Rudolph, who is co-chair of the Home Buying and Selling Group, an organisation set up by people in the industry to help government with the home buying and selling process. We're also joined by Jan Hytch, who is an estate agent from the sunny county of Norfolk, and she's going to give her point of view of the home buying and selling process from the point of view as an estate agent. And then finally, we're joined by Cooke, who used to be boss man at LSI, which is Your Move Independent, and now runs the Nurtur group, which is basically the parent organisation of the Fine and Country in the Guild, and also a group of some fantastic prop tech firms. Thank you for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen. First thing I want to start off is there's so many stakeholders involved in the home buying and selling process. There's conveyancers and estate agents, which is obviously what we're here to talk about today, but there's land registry, there's local authority, mortgage lenders, vendors, so many professions here to get the job done fundamentally from a buyer and a seller to get them moved. What is the fundamental problems? Why is it taking so much longer nowadays? Peter?
I think fundamentally people have got too much work to do. The deals themselves are getting more difficult in our experience, but what we've seen, the fundamental problem is people are trying to do too many cases with either too little experience or too little tech.
When you say too many cases, what would you expect a good conveyancing or conveyancer to have on their book?
Well, from our experience, and we are highly automated and we have high levels of technology, and we think it's 65 cases between two people. However, I regularly read online people saying it should be 90 to 100. I interview people regularly who run about 150 cases, typically without case management systems, with paper-based systems. It's no reason. It's absolutely clear. That's why it's so slow. So in our direct experience today, and this isn't hypothetical, 65 cases is more than plenty.
Why do you think that's the case, Jan? I mean, a lot of people have said that referral fees are a big issue, that, the fees of conveyancers, a lot of the proportion has to go to the estate agent. So if they're giving up, say, a quarter of their fee, they have to make it up with numbers. Do you think that's a cause of that?
I think it's probably a contributing factor, because at the end of the day, every slice that you take out of your income to give to someone else in return for an introduction can't help but impact how you deliver your service. But I think the wider thing is, as estate agents, let's not beat up on the people who are in the industry at the moment. Unfortunately, there are a lot fewer conveyancers, in my experience, per firm than there were 20 years ago. And the workload that they have is, commensurate with that. From the experience of estate agents on the ground, the problems are, yes, we've got all this technology, but it's not the right technology all of the time to do the thing that we want. And the biggest problem for us, as the user, if you like, is communication.
But don't also forget that it's not just 65 cases proceeding. You've got the 34% of transactions that fall through. So all of that wasted work by all of the stakeholders, and of course the estate agents don't get paid until
neither
completion.
do the lawyers, do they either?
No, neither do the lawyers. And on top of that, you've got all of these post-valuation queries being generated by the surveyors. Nobody gets paid for those at all. And they add 21 days to the process. Whereas if we made sure that the buyers had all of the information up front, they knew they were buying the right property for their intended use and enjoyment, they knew which lenders would lend on that property, well, then we wouldn't have nearly so many fall-throughs. But on top of that, with all of these delays, 19 weeks, you're stuck in economic stasis. You can't book a holiday, you can't buy a sofa, you can't get the kids into school. I just think what that's doing to the wider economy. If we can get all of that information up front and ensure that people have the transparency and the certainty of what's happening in their chain of transactions, then people are much less likely to withdraw from their transactions. And Rory Sutherland always says that the best improvement in British rail network was not putting on more trains, was not faster trains, it was putting those dot matrix signs above the platform, because people are more than happy to wait 7 minutes for a delayed train than 4 minutes not knowing what's happening. So we need to do the same in the conveyancing process, ensure that people are aware.
Communication. Why aren't we very good at communicating between estate agents and solicitors, John?
Well, I go back to my estate agency days, we probably were better at communicating, to be honest with you. It was very much a case of building relationships locally, and you had more direct access in some ways. What we seem to have seen is text turned up and maybe just snookered that slightly, predominantly because communication is often based on process and systems, and not everyone's on the same process and systems. So people are using data in different ways, different systems, different platforms, and that means that where we may have years ago just the only tool we had was the telephone, now we've got a number of tools to communicate with, and unless everyone's using those platforms, you're going to actually decrease the amount of communication rather than increase it.
Do you think through this lack of communication, the trust between estate agents and conveyancers has sadly pulled apart?
It's not, I think the pressures have increased so much on agents especially. I mean, what was really interesting, if we wind back a year and a half ago, everyone got on quite well. Yeah, when it was busy, there was lots going on, there were lots of deals around, and we had no problems with any agents at all. None at all. It was great. They were busy, we were busy.
Are we talking about this is the post-lockdown 2020-21?
The stamp duty holiday. So during the stamp duty holiday, when there was loads of work.
Holiday, it was a discount. You could never call it a holiday, not the amount of
effort people so during that time, when it was busy, when people weren't so stressed, and that was the key, because there were buyers were stressed, but agents weren't coming under the same sorts of pressures in a different way as they are now. We've seen things get far worse as the stocks got tighter and the pressure's coming down more on the agent. And we've definitely seen that it's been marked in the last 6 months.
But also, when I first started in the property industry as an estate agent, transactions took 6 to 8 weeks, and there were 6 things that you could ring up and ask about, whether it was the search, whether it was the instruction, whether it was the forms, whether it was the contract. Now, they've got to come up with 19 things to think about if they're only going to ring once a week. So do you think actually for the conveyancers, it's just the frustration of getting an agent on the phone again to say that you're still chasing up all of these documents?
Do you think estate agents just chase up the solicitors because they want to know when they're going to get paid?
I think at the end of the day, the estate agents are under great pressure from the buyers and the sellers who want to get the transaction done. You know, let's not forget that one of the reasons that the fallout rates on agreed sales were as low as they were 10, 15 years ago was because the process went through at a pace that meant that people could be in touch with it and they could understand what was going on. There was progress happening each week. It's absolutely mind-numbing to have to call your vendors week after week to say, I'm afraid there's no more news, I'm afraid the solicitors still haven't got back to us. It makes you feel like you're ineffectual in some cases because you're not able to extract the information. But then neither are they, and neither are the people up and down the chain in the process. So that's the issue. And as John was rightly saying, you know, we are in a situation where there are multiple ways to communicate. Even estate agents have to check their messenger, their WhatsApp, their emails, their telephone messages, you know, just to keep in touch with one client over 5 different platforms in some cases. So imagine that multiplied by the number of sales they're dealing with and the solicitors at the other end. And
also don't forget that they have to ring up when the solicitor is there. And that's a nightmare, you know, that trying to make sure that you're ringing when they're in the office available, or, you know, how are you supposed to get that information?
I've heard horror stories of, I mean, I know there's a solicitor's practice who check their emails once a week, I know. And I've also heard other horror stories where everything has to be done on a piece of paper. Peter, what's all this about?
It's in a shocking state, the conveyancing industry. I know this because I've just bought a house. And anyone that says that new technology is changing things, unfortunately, it's a bit of wishful thinking. For a few, you've got a few that invested in it years ago and have carried on investing in it. I know this because I interview lawyers every day. And one of my first questions is, what case management system have you got? And they go, oh, I've got this old thing, but it's dreadful, no one ever uses it. Fine, okay. Or they don't have a system. I have only employed 2 people, and I've employed over 200 in the last 15 years, that came from a paperless environment, okay? 2. Two, so don't give me this nonsense about tech, all right? They're not doing it. They're just not doing it. And so all these things, they're putting letters. We get letters on our posts like this. We try to stop them sending stuff in the DX, so we cancel that to stop them putting in the DX. They are chaotic.
But do you think that's because they're dabblers in the, and
Partly.
they've picked up conveyancing?
Partly they're
just because
dabblers. I mean, the city firms in London are particularly bad. You see a city firm in a chain, yeah, okay, run for the hills. That deal's not going through, yeah. You've got people, they're just basically a bit incompetent, if you ask me. If I look at law firm owners and you go, what are you doing about tech? And they go, oh. I had one great story. They were working from home and they were forced, therefore, to scan documents. We used to scan, right? But now when they've gone back to the office, guess what? They're not scanning them anymore. And this is what's happening in reality. And it's law firm owners going, oh, it's a little bit tricky. If only we could go back to where it was before.
Do you think that will change with the land registry, though, and the digital registration service coming through? Well, the point is that then we can move towards digital signatures.
We've already got that. We were the first people to do a digital signature about 3 years ago. How many have we done since then? One. Why haven't we done it? Because no one else accepts it. It's nonsense, right? Let's not get hung up on the land registry sitting there going, oh, this is amazing. It's like onboarding. I mean, it's great and all that, but that's not the problem for you guys. You don't care about onboarding. That's maybe half a day or a day. That's great and all that. It's the bit in the middle, and that's where the problem is. And fixing that, that's land registry ain't going to help on.
What about if the Law Society updated their protocol to actually reference anything? I mean, the protocol doesn't reference computer, digital, data, and in fact, their formula for exchange references telexes.
I suppose here's the question, is who listens to the Law Society?
Well, I think most conveyancers do, don't they?
In what capacity?
Well, as the protocol, so that's what sets out how
well,
they're supposed to do.
all I know is we get the most problems with CQS firms.
Exactly.
Who don't follow the protocol.
What's CQS?
Conveyancing Quality Scheme. It's a euphemism for doing the same as we've always done before.
Okay. So does it need government to come in and sort out the whole process, John?
I mean, I think the message that we're hearing is it's about communication, and I think if everyone was able to work in one platform, then that communication would improve, and that will take days if not weeks off the process. It seems hard to imagine the government coming in and saying, this is the platform you're going to use, because history tells that governments aren't great at that. However, we should mention it, home information packs. You know, I can remember being in a home sale network meeting where literally everybody, bar myself and I think one other person, stayed sitting down when everyone got up and clapped because they were going. In reality, they were probably a very sensible move towards speeding up the process because it was upfront information, which over the years would have been digitalised and probably been at a substantially cheaper price now. So I think government can help by perhaps signposting those sorts of processes where we get more upfront information. And until the government do that, there'll be various different stakeholders that are all trying to come up with things that aren't communicating with other things.
Yeah, because we could have a recognised platform, but if there's 10 people in the chain and only 8 people are on this platform and the other 2 aren't.
The point is, you know, what are you communicating? You're communicating the fact there's a delay. But as John said, if you get upfront information, maybe you get rid of your delay. The reason that it causes such a delay, not having the home information packs and upfront information, is because under the dematerialisation of deeds by the Land Registry in 2002, we no longer have deeds packets. So that means that every time a conveyancer picks up a file, they've got to start from scratch. Now, if we clear everything up front, like we do already, if it's a new build or if it's an auction property, and auction properties, 27,000 of them go through every year without any problem whatsoever. If we gather all that information, all the prescribed documents is what the upfront information group at the home buying and selling group has identified, would make a huge difference. And it was referenced in Michael Gove's Levelling Up white paper. And we had hoped that he was going to have a strategic plan to deliver it, but unfortunately he was sacked.
I think that's what the government, the impact the government or legislation can have is as a level playing field. The problem is, you know, we're in the estate agency industry where there's 20,000 or whatever number of estate agents and they're all doing things slightly differently, and conveyancers by the sound of it as well, and not necessarily embracing technology we all think maybe we'd like them to or expect to. But with government dictating a process that begins with X and everybody has to follow it, which basically, that my recognition was home information packs, at least there was a level playing field that everybody had to get to a certain bar from day one. which isn't the case at the moment.
But then we've had the Consumer Protection from Unfair Trading regulation since 2008 requiring that the material information that would impact the average consumer's decision-making process is provided, and yet estate agents don't provide it. And yet if they did, then that information would ensure that the right person was buying the property, the right lender was lending on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's got enough teeth. It's not enough information to actually speed the process up. It needs more, and it needs to be more clarity with the agents about how that will improve the process.
And that's what National Trading Standards, the State and Letting Agent team are delivering, isn't it? The guidance. I know they've done phase A and B and C are coming down the track. But that then will identify, hopefully, what needs to be done. And certainly at the Home Buying and Selling Group, we have pledges to try and get conveyancers instructed on day one of marketing to ensure that they can review the information and identify anything that might be relevant to the material information.
Yeah, and there are some quite good innovative technologies that are coming out.
Cojute's one, which they're trying to, almost like a Bluetooth for conveyance and solicitors and estate agents to all talk to each other.
Have you been reading their marketing material?
Yes, I have.
And lenders, don't forget, lenders own them.
Yes. It was me that actually came up with the title of Bluetooth. I thought it was quite good.
But it's an interesting point you make there about Cooke. I love those guys, and that's great, right? But they're in a very tricky situation because what they're trying to do is glue stuff together that can't be glued together, and that's really difficult. And I don't want to be negative, Nelly, whatever, but it's what the problem they need to do is they need to insert themselves into the conveyancing process, and that's one tricky job. So whilst they're making great strides with the agents are far more advanced, as you know, with the CRM systems, and that's going quite well. But that's the easy bit. And as I say, I don't want to be negative about it, but the problem is if you go to your typical, one of the 5,000 lawyers out there and you say, right, we're going to plug this infrastructure into your way of working, they're going to look at you and you go, yeah, that's great. Okay, yeah, you come in next week. Because it's not going to happen.
And that's the other thing.
They don't have the technology.
Is they don't have the case management systems that have the APIs to link to it. So it's going to require them to actually type it in, duplicated data entry, never going to happen.
Exactly. It's not
that's what happened with the Chain at Matrix pilot.
Yeah. Jan.
The origin of the data is with the estate agent, the primary data that comes from the general public washing around looking at houses and things like that. So if you've got software, an entry point for software, a sort of complementary software that leads through to the conveyancing process, it has to start with the CRMs that the estate agents use. And then the information in that has to be correct. And we all know we've had issues from time to time. I'm going to put my hand up. I'm on the estate agent's case today. But that happens. But that's the origin point. That's where software needs to link in with the estate agent so that information then flows through to the lawyer when it goes under offer, so that you can get the information pack started at earlier stage, so you can get the lawyers involved at earlier stage. And also, we spend a lot of time trying to guide people towards lawyers who will do the job for them in the timescale they want and do it properly and not be still working from home 3 days a week, no secretarial support, and doing everything on paper because that's the only technology they've got at home. That has to stop.
And the other thing that the Home Buying and Selling Group, the technology subgroup, is doing is that they've identified that the same data is used, as you have just said, by the estate agent, the conveyancer, the mortgage broker, the valuer, the lender. And so what you need to be able to do is to suck in the authority data from the local authorities, the Drainage Water Authority, Mining Authority, Land Registry, and then identify that. So we've created a property data trust framework which ensures that you can authenticate the provenance of that data. Because I know that as a conveyancer, I'll be going, well, if I'm receiving it from the estate agent, I'm a regulated entity, I need to know that it's where it's come from and that it's not just from the estate agent's memory.
Because is this, the amount of times people say apply for the searches up front, but then the buyer solicitors won't accept them, even though they've come from the council.
And yet they are absolutely covered by the same indemnity. And also, if you're using the personal searches under the search code, that comes with insurance, which covers anybody relying upon it. And the Council of Licensed Conveyancers recently came out confirming that, so long as it was covered either by the search code or it was from the local authority and it was in date, then you're peachy.
Peter?
I have to say, we started off doing home information packs, and that problem was there, that the lawyers wouldn't accept searches. What we've seen in the last few years, the lawyers are getting a little bit more relaxed about this. We are starting to see that on the searches side, because that was always the bane of it. So it is getting better. Coming back to your point, though, about information up front, we actually do this with Yorkies, which is part of Zoopla, and it does work. where they get all the data and it comes straight into our system with all the documents. It's a bit of a treat, actually, to be fair, and it really genuinely works. But that's one of the few times I've actually seen it work.
What, applying for searches when the property comes on the market?
No, not applying for search, just the data, one step at a time.
Well, no, but can I say, so we've got a few case studies coming through. One of them, we applied for searches, got the leasehold property inquiry for a leasehold house. And it turned out the search result came back with an error. It said that it was in a conservation area, so the seller would have had to got planning permission for building for his double glazing. But because we got the information up front, we were able to go back to the local authority, say you've got the wrong number, you need to update it. It took them 8 weeks to update it, but by the time a buyer was found, it was already sold, so that it wasn't delaying the transaction, and this is why they need to be ordered up front.
We'll come back to upfront. Let's go to John. You're pretty big in the game when it comes to prop tech, and especially with your CEO hat of Nurtur, you can look big picture. What responsibility do CRM firms have to ensure that, I mean, it's a responsibility for the estate agents to fill the CRM properly, but what responsibility does CRM firms have to ensure that they can help with the process of the home buying and selling process?
I suppose from a estate agency CRM process, I think it's starting to happen. They're opening up a lot more, which means that there's more collaboration, which means there's more communication. And I think picking up on what we said here, it's not just about communication, it's trusted communication that people buy into and don't think they need to redo it again because they don't trust the estate agent or they don't trust the conveyancer. So certainly from what I'm seeing from our group, from a technology point of view, is CRMs are opening up. And that means that data can flow, APIs are opening up, and therefore that gives the opportunity for better communication for everybody all the way through the process.
In the home buying and selling group technology subgroup, so when the Upfront Information Group created the BASPI, the Buying and Selling Property Information, they created it and the license for the use of it, which is freely available for free, is that you have to make sure that you can map that data to the RICS land data standard. Now, thinking that would then mean that all of the case management systems could suck in that data, we then found out that no, that wasn't good enough. We needed to have a standard format API, and that is what the technology subgroup are also developing. So on top of the property data trust framework, there's also the standard format JSON API that will enable that data to be interoperably transferred between all of the systems, whether it's an estate agent system, whether it's a conveyancer system, whether it's a lender system. And all of this information is available for free on the GitHub.
We did an interesting experiment with a CRM vendor where we plugged in our case management system directly to it so that they could get case updates directly from the CRM. And no one ever used it.
I mean, it comes back to what you're saying. The solicitors have case management systems, but there's no point in having a case management system if you're not going to use it.
But we did a plugin, all right, and it was really clever. We were like, well done, that's really good. 2 years ago, yeah. So if you're an agent, you can go in, look at a property, and you can get case tracking from it. Okay. No one's ever used it. Don't know why.
The fact of the matter is that the information was so vague and scant that it wasn't helpful to us, because it would say contract sent out, or it would say, 3-word statements. And so it meant nothing. So you had to phone up and say, well, when did they go out and what was the situation and da-da-da. So you had to ask those questions. The notes on them weren't compelling enough to go, oh, right, well, I can give my vendor an update on that basis.
And this is the problem with human intervention. And so last time I was working as a conveyancer, I wrote the case management system so that every time we took an action, it would automatically email the client, the other side, and the estate agents, telling them what action we'd done, what the next action was, and when we'd be chasing it. And that provided them with standard information, which meant that there could be no human intervention to confuse them.
I mean, this is only going to be driven by 2 ways, either the government saying this is what's going to happen, or the market's driving it. And by the sounds of it, you've said the government aren't going to step in. Yeah,
at the end of the day, it's the consumer who deserves a better service. They deserve a better service.
And it's not consumer-centric at all,
no,
is it?
And the consumers are the laymen in all of this. They don't know what to expect or what they should get for their money, if you like, or for the service that they've bought into, other than what they're told by the estate agent and by their lawyer. And if their lawyer says, I'm too busy to look at your case this week, I'll try and give you an update by the end of next week, they're powerless to be able to do anything about that.
And it's so confusing as well. If you think if your child came to you and they were going to buy a car, you would immediately know to say, check out its MOT, check out the service logbook, and if you're not sure, get the AA in to have a look at it. Well, you know, we should be able to say that about buying property. Have you looked at the material information? Have you checked to see if the deeds are okay for you? And have you got a surveyor in to check it over?
But how are we as an estate agency industry going to drive that one forward when fundamentally 85 to 90% of the industry is one man, one woman band estate agents?
That's the point, is that we are as an industry dealing with people who are not in their normal day-to-day world. They are in a state of high anxiety and they're under pressure, their lives are changing. The moment they're coming to the market, not just because they fancy a change or want to do something different, it's the 3 Ds, you know, divorce, death, disaster, and you know, other life factors that are causing them to come to the market to rearrange whatever their living accommodation happens to be. They're already got stuff going on in their lives. The process adds to that, and people regularly, my staff tell me, you feel like therapists when you're taking people through the sale process. If that therapy was only lasting for 12 weeks again and not 19 weeks, people could see a way of getting through it. The only way to foreshorten that is to keep in touch and keep in contact with people and keep updating. But if you're not getting updates because stuff isn't getting done, you then it's stalemate.
Okay, but please answer the question. The question was, how do we as an industry, which is primarily made up of one man, one woman band estate agents, going to change this industry? John, sorry.
I suppose the question is, how do we unlock the housing market in some way, because it's snookered. I mean, there's some data I think that came out this morning saying that we've seen a little bit of give on the amount of time it takes for a deal to go through, but unlocking the housing market, as far as I'm concerned, comes back to day one upfront information and communication on platforms that allow everybody to be able to update the customer on their terms, because in their life outside of moving house, they can get access to as much information as they like.
I know you're not directly involved with corporate estate agents, but you used to be, but do you think if the corporates really focused, you know, because they take 15, 20% of the market, if they really focused on that, because, you know, they have big buying power and big offices, if they drove forward that basically if you come with us as a big firm, you're going to get your sale through quicker, that will force the market forces that the other 80% have to follow through.
Then you've got chains of transactions. So, you know, 3 to 5 length chains, and you can go as fast as you like, but you're only going to go as fast as the slowest person in the transaction. And unless you know what's going on with them, how do you reassure everybody what's happening? And this is where we need to have upfront information mandated, and it is coming down the track. We've got the National Trading Standards project that will set out the guidance, and then, you know, what's going to come after that? I'm guessing there's going to be some regulatory enforcement if it's not done.
Okay, so upfront information. Is that the panacea? Is that
it's the upfront information, and then for the use of the data through the process.
So what does that look? What can we do? What can Joe Blow estate agent who's watching this today? What could they do today? You know, we can't wait 2 years.
No, so what they need to be doing is get in touch with their local conveyancer, saying, right, I'm going to get the information up front. So will you look through it and let us know if there are any issues and things that we need to be putting out there. And then that means that the conveyancer can identify to the seller if there are things that will slow it down. So, you know, like our conservation area having the wrong number and sorting that out. If it's a short-term lease, getting the lease extended. All of this stuff can be done. The majority of it can be fixed.
Peter?
It's idealistic at best to say that. If you go to a lawyer, can you look at these documents without being instructed? They're going to say no because of liability.
If they have to be instructed, absolutely they do. Who
Yeah,
said
but they're not going to be instructed before the sale, though, are they?
Well, why not?
Because they don't.
No, but they do.
They don't, no.
They do. In
So
a lot
Beth-
of the panel managers, they insist
Beth,
that they
I
are
think
instructed.
You advise IM Property, I think, on some of their platforms. But their Move Butler platform does exactly that. So it will deliver the searches on day one and instruct the lawyer on day one as part of the upfront information. So you could see, and that's one platform, there's 2 or 3 of them. The problem is they don't talk to each other. But you can see that there is a move by agents because of what's happened in the last year, because it's actually started to affect their bottom line. So you talk about the corporate agents, look at LSL's results. I think there was £6 million off on agency for the first half of the year because of, quote, pipeline conversion. So once it starts to affect companies in their pockets and conveyancers, I'm sure, then they will look at solutions to make it work, coming back to communication and data. However, the platforms don't talk to each other, and that's the concern.
We'll come back to that. Instructing solicitors on day one
Yeah.
by the vendor through the estate agent,
Yeah.
is that going to help?
It would help, but it's really difficult. We don't charge, we don't ask money on our account or anything like that. Agents try to do it. It's really difficult because sellers go, no, I'll wait till it starts moving ahead. They do, this is human behaviour.
But surely, therefore, it's the job of the estate agent to not sell the story that they should be doing it.
They can try. I mean, yeah, good luck to them. It's a really difficult sell.
Actually,
it's
should we
education.
Difficult sell.
actually have a consumer education campaign and ensuring that they are aware of this? Should any agent putting a property on the market, any portal, make sure that there is access to the how to buy, how to sell guides?
Governments have been coming out with these for years. They never work. They never will. People aren't interested. They want to sell their house. They want to go to the agent. They want to sell their house, and the neg is sitting there going, all I want to do is win that instruction.
So how do they do it with cars? How do they do it with
That's a
getting
different
people?
proposition. So anyway, so the point is that you can't compare a car to a house.
Why not? What I'm talking about is the same process. If I'm buying a car, I want to know all about that
But
car.
it's totally different. How emotional do people get about cars?
Well, they don't have to get emotional about houses if they get all the information up front. I've never got emotional when I'm buying a new build house because I know that I'm going to get everything immediately.
It's easy to get all the information you need to make a decision to buy a car. How crazy is that when we can't even get it about something as fundamental as a property, as your home? I would have to sort of come back to you on that point about you'll never get people to sort of start instructing solicitors at the point of instructing their estate agent. I'm not finding that. I'm finding that we're more and more getting the property information form. We do it ourselves with the client to get the ball rolling. We explain to them why we're doing this. And they understand and they appreciate the fact because they hear it. They've seen it in the news. They hear it from their friends and neighbours. It's a nightmare. It's taking us forever, blah, blah, blah. We've gone 8 weeks down the process and they've only just picked up this one thing now, which is fundamental at the start. We can, as estate agents, do a lot to get that
That's a
groundwork
different
done.
proposition, and that's absolutely the way it should be.
Do you think,
Yeah.
do you use that on the doorstep when that's fundamentally, most of the people watching this are estate agents, and we know what estate agents are like. They just want the listing because they want everyone to love them. And I think there's an awful lot of estate agents out there that will not bring up the conveyancing process and employing solicitors because they see it as a barrier to not getting the listing.
I disagree.
No,
I disagree.
Are you-
disagree.
no, but are
There
you-
will be some of them. There will be some bad
Yes, but
actors
no,
out there.
they're the bad ones.
But they're not.
But the good ones, like
Let-
Jan,
I think there are more of those out there than there are the stereotype that you're
Yeah.
painting. I would say that most estate agents, when they take a property on to the books, they want to be able to take it on at a point where they can sell it, where they can find a buyer, where they can fulfill the needs and the wishes of the client, but also to manage their expectations of the sale process. And that's not to say, well, doom and gloom, the whole thing takes forever, blah, 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 blah. That's basically to say, here's a bunch of things that you can do that we will do for you and with you that will help you speed that process up.
are you using the fact that you're getting solicitors involved in this information as a USP to gain more listings?
Well, it is not really a USP because we're not the only people doing it.
No, but if it's
other
the
good
way you
agents
sell
are
it, though,
doing
isn't it? Surely on the doorstep.
But we're saying, look, we'll do all, there's no such thing as a USP from a marketing point of view of the estate agents. Most estate agents have most of the tools in the box to throw out a sale if they want to. What we're talking about is the professional side of estate agent, which is saying we can all put the property on the books, we can all put it on the portals, we can do all of that jazz, stick a board in your garden and everything. But what we will do is take you through this really gnarly process up to the point of exchange, which is where so many things can happen that you won't know about, you won't have experienced perhaps before, but we can start this process right here, right now in the lounge on the day they instruct you to start the process. That has overcome so many niggles at an early stage. Whilst people's hearts and minds are still excited and engaged with this process, you can get through some of those things that down the line, 10 weeks down the line, become, oh God, not another thing, that sort of thing.
And it is what's in it for me, isn't it? It's identifying for each of those stakeholders, whether it's the consumer, whether it's the conveyancer, whether it's the estate agent, that actually there's a shed load in it that will improve their turnaround times, that will improve the sale, improve the ability to get the maximum value for the property.
We just got to be careful that we draw the distinction. So getting agents engaged and getting information up front, absolutely bang on. That is a totally different proposition to instructing a lawyer.
Yes, but you are having that conversation because the very form you're filling in is the form that's going to go to the lawyer at some point, which normally wouldn't be sent to them even until they'd agreed a sale.
But that's a different...
So it opens the door to have a conversation about what have you had any thoughts about who you're going to use to do your conveyancing, so that you can then talk about the process and, you know, the pitfalls and the advantages of picking, you know, a lawyer with a good reputation for turning around and for communication, because we don't want to work with lawyers that have an auto reply saying we look at emails twice a week and today's not your lucky
Twice
day.
a week, yeah.
You know, we want to work with lawyers who are responsive and excited to get a new instruction, not the ones who go, oh, another one, okay, I'll stick it on the pile.
But, and that's unfortunately where the problem arises, is that yes, it's absolutely right, and our good agents do that, and you're absolutely bang on. The problem then goes, I want someone who's legally trained to look at this information, to interpret it. This is where the problems start. So information up front, absolutely, 100%. But when you get into problems, you need a qualified lawyer to look at it. And then you're saying to the consumer, now you need to instruct a lawyer. And this is where we hit the barrier. And that's the problem. But you're right. And
Are you instructing solicitors? Actually, people having a liability on a cost when they instruct?
Yes, but you know, like you were saying, we're very often working with lawyers who go, that's fine, you send us the form, we'll open a file, we'll put the file ready to go. They'll do that much work for the goodwill, effectively. No, of course they won't start sending out searches and doing all that kind of thing. But
should they start sending searches out?
They should be having the conversation. We're back to communication again. So they should be saying to the client, look, for us to send off your searches now, we'll save you time and perhaps raise issues that we need to deal with, but it will cost you X amount. Would you like us to do that for you? Those conversations don't happen because the lawyer sits there and assumes the client doesn't want to spend any money until they've got a buyer and terms of business.
Which is ridiculous, because we know in Scotland they pay £800 for a home report without a twinkle of the eye. There's been no change in the number of properties going through the transaction before, during and after the production of home reports. We did 2 years of home information packs, and yeah, they may have got scrapped, but actually there were no problems with people paying for them. Because would you feel more comfortable paying for a property that you own that you're selling, or for a property that you might be buying? Well, we already expect buyers to cough up £500 for their searches as soon as they had their offer accepted.
John, are we telling ourselves in our heads as estate agents that people won't pay because it's a barrier to getting the listing? We don't want anything to get in the way?
I think the agent clearly earns their money from selling the house, and if you haven't got the house you can't earn the money, so you're always going to be very focused on closing the listing. I do hear terms like, I think you interviewed John Hanford recently, great estate agent in the Midlands, and he uses terms like speed to sale rather than speed to market. In other words, how can we get you sold and through the process of actually what you want to achieve here, rather than just get your house on the market on Rightmove within 24 hours. So there are some sophisticated conversations going on with clients, quite rightly so, about how they can manage the process from a sales perspective. So I don't think you're ever going to take away the agent's desire to close a listing,
because it
comes down to education.
But estate agents are great at selling,
if we
so
educate
why are
the
they
estate
selling
agency
this?
community that upfront information is the right way forward, they'll then educate the customers, vendor customers, is the right way forward. Yeah.
So,
but then if conveyancers aren't asking for all this information up front, if we're not asking for the material information, you sort of think, well, you can understand why the estate agent isn't bothered getting it. And I know there was a Property Mark survey that showed that 60% of estate agents were getting the upfront information, but nobody was asking for it. They would provide it if asked, but nobody asked for it. So actually, we just all need to sit up and realise that the solutions are already out there. We need to embrace them. But then the other thing is, why is this information not available digitally? It's all held by public bodies. If I own a house, surely I own the information about whether I've got a planning permission, whether I've got restrictive covenants, whether my property is connected to the public sewers. Why can't I get that information from the local authorities, from the drainage water, from the land registry, and why do I have to pay for it, and why isn't it real time?
There's also a presumption on the part of people who are coming to come sell their house, that because the estate agent is largely going to be no sale, no fee, although that's not strictly true because they're still going to pay for EPCs, photography in some cases, those kind of things. So they're not averse to putting some money into the game to start the process off. So that commitment to coming to the market is not, coming without any cost whatsoever. But in my experience, they're much more interested in what you've got to say more than perhaps your competitors about the process and about what's coming next and about the things that you could do to preempt those problems and blockages that come down the line of the process. They're not just going, stick it on the market, I want to see it on Rightmove tomorrow, and sit back and wait for the offers to come in, and then I've got to suddenly think about what do I do if I get an acceptable offer. We don't want to invest all that time for them to get to a point where they go, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do next. Let's get them right at the start, as you were saying, and get that information, make them have some skin in the game and be part of that process from day one.
Creating really sticky clients, because the number of clients that will move their transaction to another estate
you're less likely
agent.
to leave the estate agent if you've
exactly.
invested.
If you've invested in all of that
But
information.
emotionally as well as in financial terms.
Yeah.
So what does upfront information actually look like? Where can people get, let's just say there's an estate agent watching this, what can they do today to start the process of saying, because it's all very good saying upfront information.
There's loads of search companies out there who you press one button and they will get you all of the searches that you needed and the land registry documents. Well, the seller will pay for it. They're more than happy to. And then you get the buying and selling property information completed, the BASPI. You can get that off the Home Buying and Selling Group website for free. Or through the technology subgroup. We've got a load of suppliers that you can complete it digitally. So you're just sending a link out.
I tell you what, we'll put a link here. Let's put a link here. We'll put various links here.
Yeah. And then the purpose of that is, yes, you're going to come across some solicitors who demand to have the TA6. Well, that's fine, because the BASPI is a data
what's this
set.
TA6?
Oh, sorry. It's the seller's information form. It's the Law Society's form under CQS, Conveyancing Quality Scheme. But the benefit of the BASPI is that it's a data set, so that if it's been filled in, it can then be used to pre-populate the TA6 or the Property Mark PIQ or a summary for the surveyor. And RICS, Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, has helped us develop a summary for the surveyor so that when they go out to value, they value it on the true position, not on assumptions.
Okay, so you're co-chair of the Home Buying and Selling Group. Do you have an idiot's guide for estate agents to say, do this, do this, do this, and do this?
Yep.
Because you've been dropping lots of TLAs in there, which is 3-letter acronyms. Okay. This is, we're dealing with estate agents who quite simply, I say politely, they
don't have time to go hunting to find out what exactly they need.
We need a clearly defined
on the Home Buying and Selling Group website.
Because I must admit, I went onto your website, and I must admit, I'd like to think I'm pretty switched on, and I got lost.
Well, you'll have to show me where you think it should be, because then we can update it. But also on top of that,
home screen. If you're an estate agent and want to sell houses quicker, press here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it's fill a load of forms in, instruct the solicitors. Vendor's got to pay a bit of money, which means estate agents have to change their mindset that it's not a barrier. Am I right? Am I jump in if I'm, yeah?
There may even be referral fees involved there, so maybe that's going to help.
I mean, we are talking now in the summer of 22. The number of transactions is nowhere near what it was last year. We get paid on results. Do you think we've almost had it too good in the last couple of years and we've just let the money come in and I'll sod it, or bloody well sell anyway, and if it doesn't sell?
I don't think anybody felt that they were getting it good in the last couple of years. It's been a hard slog for everybody. And yes, there's been a lot of money coming in. But for the people actually at the coalface, how did that feel?
Tricky.
It was very hard. It's the hardest most people have worked in their careers in estate agency.
But on the flip side, when you're selling a lot of houses, that also does take the pressure off. So there is a flip side to it. I mean, it was tough, don't get me wrong. And we had to fight hard to keep our cases down. I mean, we let it was very interesting. We let it run, which we shouldn't have done. We went from 650 cases up to 2,000 cases in 4 months.
Oh my God, it's no wonder it was taking so long.
Well, yeah, and we were one of the good guys. We were like, flipping it. So then we went, okay, everything needs to stop. So we did get ourselves into a bit of a pickle. And then we got it down to about 1,200 again. So it was fine, and we'd recruited more, but it was
1,200
tricky.
cases, 19 weeks. So every week, that progression phone call, maybe half an hour talking for the estate agent, try and get through. So I can't even do the maths on that. So that's like 10 hours extra.
Okay, so we've got.
Let's
Let's bring it back, because what estate agents are like. They don't care about what's happened. All they care about is the listing. So we've got some forms that need filling in, which they can download on the link that we put on the screen. Okay, we're going to instruct solicitors, and we need a mindset piece change with valuers that this is a good thing that's going to help them get more listings, because that's all they care about, isn't it? You know, it's why valuers
And
don't...
they won't lose the listing later as well.
Well, no, exactly, because let's be honest, valuers don't even mention mortgage arrangers because they think that it might turn them off on the listing.
If I can just finesse that a little bit, I don't think that that's the case. And that's a gross generalisation.
It might not be in your firm, but trust me, in estate agency land...
Well, if the direction of the business and the you know, what's coming down the line to the branch managers is that listings is the all-important thing, sales is the all-important thing, listings is vanity, sales is sanity.
But
So
you're talking as a boss.
I am talking as a practitioner.
No, but frontline listers. They don't care
Sure.
about the exchange.
But if
they
they're-
care about the listing.
If they're targeted on sales that go through as opposed to listings, which is the vanity part of it, well, then they will take the time to go through the TA6 or the equivalent to get that information before they start the whole process of spending fortunes on marketing, only to find they've got a
They don't
disengaged
care about
client.
that. They just care about the listings and having their properties
You've
on and
got
having the
such
big
a
market.
bad
We
view
need
on
to have another
estate
debate
It's
on
just the way
this.
I'm not talking about one man, one woman band estate agents. I'm talking about the employed valuers. All they care, you know, it's why valuers don't do sales calls or vendor calls because, you know, they overvalued it because all they care about is getting the listing. I'm being naughty.
Did you say you're coming up to Norfolk in a couple of weeks? Come into my practice and see how it's done.
But this is the really good point, though, is that you do have those unengaged estate agents who don't get to identify all this. And how do we reach out to them? Because it's all well and good if they're with Property Mark or the Guild, but actually there's a shed load more estate agents, and we need to make sure that they're advised. And should that go out through the Property Redress Scheme or through the Property Ombudsman to say, look, this is what you can do to improve the process and create a positive process for all?
I think Rightmove should be spending some of their millions and getting it out.
Well,
they are involved in fairness.
In their defence, right, Rightmove, okay, they've just launched, and this isn't an advert for Rightmove, they've just launched a training program.
Other
for estate
portals are
agents.
available.
Other portals are available. They've just done exactly that, and they've invested all in that, and good for them. I was involved in going through the conveyancing process, so Rightmove have done that.
Good, well done, nice one, Miles, well done. Right, so instruct solicitors, get these forms out. Other things before we talk about other things. What about reservation agreements?
So at the Home Buying and Selling Group, we did produce reservation agreements that were approved by all of the sectors. The government took that away to a research company called Kantar, who did some consumer focus groups. Unfortunately, the government had missed what had actually been told to them as part of the call for evidence into improving the home moving process. And had not spotted that actually reservation agreements only work if you've got upfront information, because otherwise all you're doing is creating a third actor in the process to get the reservation agreement signed and then locking your seller and buyer into 22 weeks of hell waiting for the transaction to go through, and then they're going to lose money if they pull out. Whereas when you look at Norway, Denmark, vendor disclosure states of Australia, what they have done is they've done binding offers. So all of the information is available up front, all of it is reviewed by the buyer before they're allowed to put an offer in. They have to be financially qualified before they put an offer in, and then there's a 6-day cooling off period once the offer is in. Once they've done that, exchange of contracts is right there, right then. It's almost the same as an auction. And that means that they're still not moving for 12 weeks. But during that time, they're able to organise their removals. They're able to find a related transaction if they've got to buy on or whatever. So that was the idea. Now, unfortunately, because the government's review of it was on the basis of just reservation agreements, the feedback was, actually, this is not a good idea. But the moment you put in upfront information, it makes a huge difference.
I mean, I know there are lots of reservation firms out there, but a lot of my clients use Gazelle, and the fall-throughs are hardly next to nothing. But again, it comes down to
because of the
having
upfront information. Yeah.
It comes back to that. Anything to add on property logbooks? Could they help?
Yep, absolutely. They're the digital twin of the deeds packet. If you collate all that information, you can transact every time with your property with the correct information, so that you're not recreating everything each time. And when I say transact, we're not just talking about selling and buying, we're talking about remortgaging, we're talking about retrofit, we're talking about all of the stuff that's coming down the track at
Retrofit,
homeowners.
what does that mean?
Well, where a property is not meeting the EPC rating for if they want to let it out, for example, or if they want to improve the property, because we're going to see an awful lot of greening going on, aren't we, with the environment situation as it is, then it's much easier to retrofit properties if you know what the construction is and what planning permission you would need. The other thing about property logbooks is that you can store in there really important stuff like smart home passwords and stuff. So if you think at the moment you might have a hive boiler, you might have a doorbell, a Ring doorbell, which then has a video on it. Well, when you buy that property, how are you going to make sure that you get the information to enable you to access those and to stop the seller from having access to CCTVs that looks at your property?
That's really important for deceased estates and probate sales. That sort of area of work. You are going in blind quite a lot of the time because you've got someone who's maybe responsible for dealing with the estate agent who may not have even been to the property, doesn't know the area or anything. So those kind of things would be absolutely gold for the agent.
Yeah, and the property logbook group have created a self-regulatory thing, so that they are starting to agree exactly what a property logbook is, making sure that there is only one, because of course that could be a fraud opportunity, and connecting it to the unique property reference number, the UPRN. Yeah, you know what that one is.
That's a 4-letter one. I could do 4 letters.
But that means that there will be only one per property, and it will gather all of the information. So if you think of cladding and trying to identify whether the appropriate certificates have been produced, because under the building safety regulations, you're now going to have the leaseholder's certificate, you're going to have the landlord's certificates, confirming whether you're a qualified tenant or not, whether you owned 2 or more properties on the 14th of February 2022. I mean, it's just crazy there. So where are you going to store this information? Well, property logbook seems to be the right place.
We are in agreement, irrespective of what the government says, what the market says, if estate agents, because primarily the people that are watching this are estate agents, that the employment of a solicitor on day one by the seller to apply for the searches and apply for title deeds, together with the estate agent getting the other prescribed information that they will require, is a great way to secure the listing if it's sold right, and also you have a less chance of it withdrawing if the property doesn't come on the market, if it remains on the market. Are we in agreement with that?
Yes, largely.
Yep. Absolutely, but also...
Because let's be honest, if there's estate agents in this room, all they care about is, I just want more listings and I don't want it to go anywhere else.
No.
Okay?
We want more sales.
More sales, not
Okay.
listings.
Listings
Okay,
is vanity,
but you need the
remember?
property on the market if you're going to sell it.
Absolutely, but you don't want people coming on the market, realising what's involved in the sale process and going, that's all too complicated, and then coming off the market.
Because that's hugely expensive for estate agents. You don't want to waste your time putting properties on the market that you're not going to sell.
But again, all they care about is the listing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the listing is key, isn't it? If you have
Of course
a
it is.
listing. And I think realigning your approach to achieving the listing, it's all about the seller outcome. So the vendor outcome, it's actually not necessarily about the bricks and mortar, it's about the outcome of the actual consumer. And by informing them that upfront information will help them achieve that outcome, is going to make that outcome happen.
God forbid, estate agents serving the people that they serve as opposed to estate agencies serving estate agents. My word. I'm sorry.
Christopher, we're going to fall
No,
out
that's my
quite
opinion.
badly. We're going to fall out quite
No,
badly
we're not
if you
gonna-
carry on with that.
I'm not
tack.
obviously talking about your
It's a
firm.
vocational job. They do it because they want to help people move house, and they aren't going to do that if they're not getting all the information up front.
If they focus on seller outcomes, then the right.
Okay, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, the seller outcome. It will improve trust. Communication, again, I'm just going to just touch on this slightly. We've been talking about estate agency and conveyancers and the trust and the communication, but we've got other people involved. We've got the surveyors, we've got the mortgage lenders.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the other thing we haven't talked about. We've talked about the seller, but what about the buyer? What about estate agents qualifying buyers properly before they put the offer forward? What about the decision in principle from the mortgage lender?
Sorry, I thought a note from your mum saying Johnny can have a mortgage was fine.
But also, what about their source of funds? If they've got it from money laundering, and what about their identity? Luckily, there's digital identity coming through, which will enable a certificate to be shared by all of the stakeholders. This is from the Department of Culture, Media and Sports. Not quite sure how that fits with home moving, but anyway, and that will enable digital ID to be transferred across the whole process, which will mean estate agents don't have to think about it anymore. They can just send them the link to click the button. Happy days.
Sounds great, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, learn the conveyancing process.
Go to Rightmove's courses, they're very good.
Okay, because the amount of feedback I get from the solicitors and the conveyancers, have you applied for searches yet? And they're asking the wrong side of the party. Or
I mean, to be fair, well, we've just indicated that in the room. I mean, no, we do a lot of training with agents, and it works really well. We go out there, and they love it. It works well. We do it. It's good, and we do stuff online, and it's good.
Okay, better communication in the chain. There's some great opportunities out there. There's firms like ViewMyChain, which allow you to see everyone in the chain, and they've got some very fancy technology which allows you to see if houses fall through. Because what a pain in the backside when a house falls through and you don't get to know about it for 2 or 3 weeks.
Also, we've already spoken about online case tracking, and all you get to see via the conveyancer's online case tracking is what the conveyancer's done on that particular side. You don't get to see the other side. You don't get to see the related transactions. So
it's one of the most common things we get asked about, because we have a portal for agents, and they always say, I want to see the other side, and then you get into this confidentiality nonsense, and it is really difficult because we can't disclose stuff on a related, and it
was as a result of the call for evidence, something that the ministry did identify. They said, we need to deliver certainty and transparency, and chain view is really important to that. And certainly that's something that they haven't picked up on. I think presumably they think
because a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay, fantastic. Better notification of sales. I read a report, which I know your colleague Ian McKenzie was involved in, that 60% of notification of sales had the wrong information on.
Yep. That's just plain sloppy on the part of the agent.
But again, if it's digital and it's sucked in from completing the BASB or whatever, then that can pre-populate the memos. If your case management systems are all communicating.
These are the memos of sale, and that's down to the quality control within the estate agent who deals with it. Estate agents who have support departments that deal with the post-sale process tend to be much better. At Arnolds Keys, the support department are the gateway to whether a sale can be booked as a sale or not. So not until all of those bits of information are in place is that sale allowed to be booked.
And also if you've got the digital ID for the seller to make sure that you're actually selling on the behalf of the person who owns it, not a seller impersonating fraudster, because you're not going to get paid by a fraudster.
I mean, it's interesting. I was talking to an estate agent in the Northwest, and his USP at the moment is the fact that he outsources his sales progression to a professional, and that means he gets his sales through for less sale falling through, but also he can prove. And what is quite interesting is that I don't know if you've heard, there's a firm called 20EA, which are part of 20CI, and they have a wonderful piece of kit called Insight. Now, again, I'm not being paid to say this, but I just love the bit of kit. It actually tells you for every house that you put on the market, what percentage of them will actually exchange contracts.
I've seen this, yes.
Okay, it's an absolutely amazing bit of kit. As I said, I'm not being paid a penny to say it, and I keep banging on about it, but honestly, it's a bloody amazing bit of kit. Managing expectations of buyers and sellers.
It's impossible. You can't do it. You just can't do it. Our number one complaint we get at the moment is, you didn't make it certain enough for me. And we try. I don't know, well, you must be finding this. It is so difficult.
It's got to be done. It's whether you do it or don't do it. It's that managing expectations has to start in the living room on the day when they decide to go onto the market, or even before. The points that you have to make is you have to explain the system, you have to explain the process. Yes, it's broken. They need to understand that it's not working as it should do. Certainly isn't working as well as it was 20 years ago. But the point is, if they know this up front and they're prepared for it, then they don't start running around booking a removals firm a week into the...
Comes back though to the valuers. They don't want to put barriers in the way to get the listing.
Well, it doesn't have to be the valuer. It is the staff of the estate agency. You've got your after sales
What
team.
we do, interestingly, is that on our portal, we have estimated how long we think it's going to take. And it's a general thing. We have estimations, so it's going to take 14 weeks. We're always very conservative. So we have it.
That's a quick one.
So anyway, so it's in there. But then the problem is, we go, it's estimated, don't rely on it. And then they go, oh, you've missed your own deadlines. And you go, well, they weren't really deadlines. They were just a general advice. And they go, oh, it's not good enough. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
We and most agents, I think, have a conversation with people to say, look, in an ideal world, this is the process, it's 19 weeks. Is there anything that you can think of that might foreshorten that or make it a longer process? So, and it goes down on the memorandum of sale saying, ideally all parties would be in agreement if we could reach a stage of contract by X date or completion by X date. It's just a thing to hang your hat on to start the process, because otherwise you wander off into the wild blue yonder and nobody's really quite sure whether they should be packing this week or next.
But also, if estate agents who do this day in, day out, don't know how the process works. How on earth is the consumer, the layperson, supposed to know? And certainly at the Conveyancing Association, there's an animated film, just 3 minutes long, explaining what goes on in the conveyancing process. And the hits on that are incredible, the number of people that go and have a look at it. And it also identifies what they can be doing up front to support the estate agents when they say, okay, we're going to need to see your ID, we're going to need you to fill in the forms, we're going to need you to instruct a conveyancer.
Finally, what do you think conveyancers could do a bit more?
Stop taking low fee work from panels. They can start that for a start. The biggest problem they've got is they're taking on too many cases because they can't afford enough.
Do you think if referral fees were banned, it would actually go an awful long way to solve the problem?
I'm not against referral fees. We pay them. It's not a fundamental problem until it starts to affect the actual number of cases. Where they distort the market is where, for example, we've gone out and spoken to agents and said, we're referring these people, we're using this panel, the service we get is shocking, it's absolutely terrible, but we're telling our clients it's really good and it'll go through first, because if we didn't use them, we're getting £400 referral fee each time. If we didn't use them, it'd be financial suicide. So what's happening is you're seeing too many cases where agents and intermediaries are being paid more than the lawyers. £200 a case is not uncommon.
John, do you think because average fees in a estate agency have gone down from 1.6 in 2006-8 to an average of 1 now, that basically estate agents have used referral fees to bump up their P&L? And if we actually had better estate agents that could charge more, then this wouldn't be so much of an issue with referral fees?
I think that referral fees are here and they're staying, they're not going anywhere. And it becomes part of the take of the agents. Certain agents rely on it more than others. Your point earlier, Peter, about the number of conveyancers that you've got, if I just move on to that, you said you've got 65 cases for 2 people.
Yeah.
So just let me understand the two people piece. Is
that a lawyer and a legal assistant?
Legal assistant. Yeah. So I think when you look at relating that to fees, obviously there has to be a price that the lawyer can run their business on, yeah, and that comes down to what the consumer will pay and what the agent will take out the middle. And there are some examples of some fairly extreme fees being taken out the middle. Yeah, I can see that from the sector. However, there is a cost of sale element for the conveyancer, whereas if they weren't getting the referrals, they would have to spend a certain amount of their revenue on trying to attract the consumer at a point where would they know who's moving and who's not moving. So there's sort of both sides of the equation there. It's, do you drill it down so that you can only have one person doing 65 cases, or less people in your conveyancing business by using more technology, or more specialised people only doing the specialised parts of the process, or do you have to increase your prices?
The other thing that I would say is it's very rare to find, and it's actually very refreshing when you do find it, is a conveyancer who will say, if you want the first class Royal Mail service, it will cost you this. If you just want the normal service, it will cost you that. Give people the choice. Give a purchaser or a vendor the choice as to what they want to pay for their conveyancing service. If you want someone on the end of the telephone when you call, if you want the process to be at the top of the pile as often as it can be, people will pay more. We had a case recently, we got a property through from an offer on a Friday to an exchange of contracts the following Friday, purely because everybody downed tools to do that one thing for a week and nothing else. Everybody in the process was more than happy to pay for that process. But no, you talk to people about that and they go, well, that's impossible. How could that possibly happen? Well, it can. You need to scale your service so that people can pitch in where they want.
Serve up choice to the consumer that says, well, you can choose this lawyer at this price and they will get it through in this time because we know that they've done that, or you can choose this lawyer at this price, and there's still the ability to have a referral fee in there. So again, using technology to serve up and give the consumer the choice based on, as you said, if I want to pay for a little bit more because I know that lawyer perhaps hasn't got as many cases and statistically proves they can do stuff quicker because they might have 65 rather than 150 or whatever the case numbers are. So there is certain technology now that allows the consumer to make that choice.
So to conclude, we're saying estate agents, because most of the people watching this are going to be estate agents, should be instructing solicitors and applying for searches on behalf of the seller where the seller is reliable for costs on day one. getting the information up front and using it as a sales tool to secure the listing better and also make the property a little bit more stickier. We need to use technology better to find the right solicitors and also get the process through quicker. Conveyancers need to be more transparent and more proactive in their approach, and estate agents need to learn the process of conveyancing better through education, and by doing that we will enable us to trust each other better and just basically create a better, what am I trying to say, a better service for our clients, which ultimately is the buyers and the sellers that we're trying to deal with here. Is that about right?
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a positive home moving process for all. Now, to do that, the conveyancers need to be asking for that material information up front. The estate agent needs to be putting the information in their memorandum of understanding. It's all well in memorandum of understanding, memorandum of sale, because they know about the home moving process, and ensuring that what they've collected they do pass on to the conveyancers, but also to the mortgage broker, because we want to make sure that the mortgage application goes to the right lender that will lend on that property. So we need to share and we need to collaborate and we need to ensure that all of the information is available up front.
Jan, your final thoughts?
I think we've talked about right at the beginning and all the way through this about communication. If we could wind the clock forward in a couple of years' time and see the basis of a grid of information that's shared between all parties that we can log into and have a look, so that you can see the chain, you can see the progress. Like you were saying about the railway station, you can look at the headlines as to what's happening, what's going up and down. You can see we've got a problem 3 sales down the line, or a blip that we need to wait for. That's fine, we'll look at it again tomorrow. Less of that to be pestering lawyers when you're wanting them to do that to get cases out. We will be in a lot better shape.
Final thoughts, Peter?
I think that people need to stop and take a breath and realise that we can't carry on as we are. And something has to change. My personal view is technology. I think we need to be less scared of it. I think the technology solutions that are out there, most of them are simplistic at best. We've got a few. I think chain view is really critical, and that's a clever bit of tech. Something that doesn't involve people. Yeah, we need to take people out of the process. I think that's the key, because we're not building many more lawyers these days.
Final thoughts with you, John Cooke?
Bring back home information packs
Good man.
digitally.
Yeah.
Good man.
Can I just say on behalf of the industry, thank you for taking the time and trouble for coming to London today for the interview. And finally, I'd like to say thank you to you, the viewer, for watching this. I hope you found it of use. And if you've got any questions, give these guys a call. They're all available on LinkedIn, and take it from there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.